Welcome to Not Factory Approved. I haven't said this for about 120 videos, so I thought maybe it's time I did. The purpose of this channel is to not necessarily show the best way of doing something, it's to show a way of doing something. And if you've been watching for a while, you know that I've learned as I go. So I want to encourage you, don't be afraid to try new things. And if you really can't stand to destroy something, then practice on something that you can destroy. And it's not a big deal. Otherwise, you'll gain lots of experience and you'll be satisfied with your results, or not, the more you practice. So keep practicing, don't be afraid. Here we have the 13 F-150, the one we rely on, not the one that I'm trying to fix. But today I have a job to do taking the carbon out from around the intake valves. The symptoms are a lumpy idle and a lack of power, and the gas mileage goes down, especially under load. If you have a headwind or something, you're using a couple more liters per 100, depending on how bad it is. I last did this at 130,000 kilometers. Now the truck has about 260. So it's time to do it again. Unfortunately, that's part of direct injection. That's a complication. So one thing to note is never ever turn an engine with a timing chain tensioner backwards, especially if it has mechanical stops in the tensioner, because it will take up all the slack of the chain, and then the variable valve timing won't work. Your chain is way too tight and you'll be wearing everything. So that's one thing to watch. Last time I did this, I did it with sea foam, and I turned the engine until the valves were closed, filled up the intake chamber with sea foam, let it sit for about 15 minutes, softened everything up, and then took a vacuum cleaner and sucked it out. I did that 6 times. This time I'm going to try mechanically scraping it. I'm going to have to be really careful not to scratch the valves, especially on the stem. So that'll cause oil to come past in the guides. So let's see what I can do. I'm going to have to make a tool to do that. Some people use a wire brush with a long extension on it, or a long shaft. And the only ones I can find like that are 75 bucks and up. And I don't have one, and it would mean running around 70 kilometers away to go find one, at least, and running around Edmonton. So I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to try and make a scraper that doesn't scratch the valves. Let's see how it goes. First thing to do is take off the turbo tubing for the intake and the engine cover, the oil cap, and then I take off the intake, which means you have to have new O-rings. They're a special O-ring. In Canada, these are 50 bucks for 6, so they're not cheap. Ford part, but they work great. So here goes. So to start with, undid the intake body. There's 3 5/16 or 8mm hose clamps. The nuts to come off. Then you have to take off all these specialized connectors here. So this type, you pull up the tab gently because they get brittle. Work it off. There it is. This one, same thing. Push it in. Clears the ring that's locking it. This one over here, you have to push the tabs together and down and out. Then that comes off. Then these to remove. This connector, that connector, and probably this connector too. Get it out of the way. Take off the foam pad of the high pressure fuel pump. And then we should be able to unbolt the manifold, which is this thing. Now, these two connectors come off with a simple push tab here, push down, so you can get more light on that. You see a tab there, push down on that. It clicks on, push down, and it pulls off. Same with this one. Now I'm going to take off this panel here, try and get the connector out of the way, and lift the intake manifold. There it is, one intake manifold, not there, and the ports. So here it is, and here's the O-rings. Oil in there is perfectly normal, especially on a turbo engine. There's more blow by because of higher cylinder pressure. So that's where the valves are. I'll see if I can get in there. And I'll show you a picture when I figure that out. It's going to be tricky to try and show you this, but I'll give it a shot. I think I got the camera all oily. That's the valve there. This is one of the worst ones, which is really not very bad at all. Last time I said I cleaned it with seafoam, I actually cleaned it with carb cleaner and let it soak. So this time I just sprayed in a little seafoam over each valve. I gotta clean that camera, sorry. It's not working. There's a valve, what do you know? You can see there's not much buildup there. There's a bit, but not much. So I'll try and I'll shape some plastic first and see if I can get this stuff out of there, and then put the shop vac in the hole. See if I can suck it out. I'll show you what it looks like after. Hopefully this is visible. There's the valve there. That corroded looking piece, well, it's actually cast aluminum, is a lip that the air flows over to get into the valve. Probably to create turbulence, I'm guessing. But you can see the valve is much cleaner than it was. The guide is cleaner too. If I can get on there. Okay, there's the valve. You can see the guide there. Way cleaner than it was. But even saying that, it wasn't that dirty to start with. It was worse the first time I did it. So I don't know where that leaves me with the rough idle, the poorer fuel economy. It shouldn't be the plugs. They were changed about 60,000 clicks ago, and they're supposed to be good for 100 on a turbo engine. Let's see if a little better with the flashlight in there. Yeah, there we go. That's better. Now you can see it. There's lots of fairly rough casting there. I've scraped it. I'll show you what I made for a tool. And it's a little crude, but it's the best thing I could find for the job. I tried a couple of different ways of doing it, and that was it. So there too, same thing. And that's with scraping it, so spraying in some seafoam, letting it soak a bit. Then blowing that out, or scraping it, blowing all that out into a rag, and then scraping it more as needed. So where has the tool gone? Here it is. So this is it. It's just an old hacksaw blade. I've ground off the teeth, made it slightly rounded so it wouldn't mark things, and then ground it to a kind of a screwdriver point. And it's flexible enough, and if you don't push hard, it's certainly strong enough, and it chips off the old soot, and it doesn't scratch anything. So, or buy a wire brush, a rotary wire brush for about $100. Well, 75 anyway. there's the intake manifold. All bolted up, all the plumbing is back on. So the intake gets torqued up to 89 inch-pounds, which is not much. It's just over 7 foot-pounds. So don't over torque it, and start in a normal crisscross pattern. Start in the middle, go to the other side, next one there, into there, and come to the front, across to here, to the back, right down by the firewall there, and the high pressure fuel line, inlet I presume, yep, inlet. And then there's another one back here on the other side of the engine cover bracket. That's it. That would be 10 of them. 8 bolts. Okay, let's see how this thing does. So far it seems to be running better, but who knows for sure. Seems to be running smoother. I'll give it some beans. I'd say its power is probably up a little. See how it does cruising along. Slow down to a decent speed. Set the cruise. Oh, wrong one. Yeah, there's a headwind, but fuel economy, jury's still out. Probably do a little better, but it's going to take time to figure that one out. I'd say it's running better though, so that's an improvement. Thanks for watching. Okay, so I took it to town, drove it about, I don't know, 50 or 60 clicks. I had to fill up, so on the way there it was doing, it was a good headwind. It was doing better, but I couldn't tell because it was near empty on the tank. And this is an averaging consumption gauge. So I filled it up, reset the gauge, and definitely did better on the way home. Again, into a headwind, and it was running smoother. I don't know if you can hear it idling now, but it's smoother than it was. So an improvement, even though the valves were not that dirty. So, and I'll show you why they weren't that dirty. They were much dirtier the first time. So if you noticed, the intake manifold when I took it off was quite oily inside, but even that was an improvement from past days. It's because I've been using this for quite a while. After the last time I cleaned them, I installed this, which is just basically a trap for oil. Some turbulence in there, and it allows the oil to settle out, so you don't get quite as much oil passing over the valves into the intake manifold. And then you have to drain it off every once in a while. That's this line here, which I've just taken through by the rad, shoved up in a hole, the bracket, and then there's a valve underneath the unit you have to open and then close it again. Otherwise you have blow-by going straight out and you lose some of your boost. So there you go. This one's a Moroso. See it there. They're fairly expensive, but it does seem to work. It's not perfect by any means, but last 130,000 kilometers have shown that it does work. So hopefully that helps you make some decisions. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, or even notify, or any of the above, or all of the above. Thank you.